Exploring data. Now, when we collect our data set, like I told you the other time, there's certain information in the data set that are hidden that we actually need to review. And that is the reason why we need to analyze the data. But you know what? Uh, the very first thing we need to do when we have our data set, we need to understand the nature of our data set. We need to know our data set. We need to understand our data set. The relationship between the data set and the researcher is just synonymous with the relationship between a doctor and a patient. Because for doctor to be able to treat a patient very well in the hospital, of course, the doctor needs to be able to understand the patient. And that is, what we're trying to do here. We get our data set. Okay, we need to understand our data set. So, like I said, I'm actually going to be walking you through, how we can actually do data exploration. Now, these are the outline for today. I'm actually going to talk about the graphical summaries of data. And when we talk about graphical summary of data, data can have two nature. Data can be categorical, and the data can be quantitative in nature. So how do we uh, summarize graphically a quantitative set of data? How do we summarize graphically uh, a categorical variable? And that is actually going to be the focus of this lecture. Okay, so I'm actually going to give you an example right now. Yes, you can see right here. Let's say we actually collected data set, okay, on, 5 variables: abortion, gay marriage, religion, war, and economy. Maybe we actually have 351 respondents, okay, and we ask them question about, you know, uh, what they give priority, okay, what the respondent actually give priority to, okay, what they actually want the government, to do, what they prioritize, okay, as the as what as what's supposed to be the major policy. Now, out of 351, 33 of the respondents actually, prioritize abortion, okay. As you know, in some states in the United States, there have been debates about abortion law and stuff like that. Okay. Then gay marriage 24, religion 40, war 179, and economy 75. So as you can see, this is the frequency, just trying to tell us the number of respondents, you know, that prioritize a particular policy. Now let me tell you this, these 5 are more or less like maybe the policy of government, and uh, the uh, this is the number of respondents, that actually prioritize a particular policy within the policy of the government. Okay, so as you can see, those who prioritize war, there about 179, so which is the highest. Now, if I want to look at that in terms of proportion, okay, it's actually going to be like if I want to get this one now, it's going to be 33 divided by 351, 24 divided by 351 to get that, and 40 divided by 351 to get that, 179 divided by 351 to get that, 75 divided by 351 to get that. And why are we trying to get proportion? We are trying to get proportion because if you take a look at the 351 that we have right here, the 351 is not the total number of people in that environment. Of course, the 351 was just a sample that was chosen randomly. And you know what? What do we do in research? We normally want to use, we investigate sample, and we actually want to generalize on the entire population. And a way to generalize from the entire population is, okay, if you can work on the percentage. Like if you take a look at the proportion that I have right here, I'm going to multiply each of that by 100. And when I multiply each of that by 100, of course, it's going to be 9.4%, 6.8%, and so on. Of course, as you can see, it means 51% of the respondents actually prioritize war. Okay, so I'm actually going to assume this to be the estimate of the population, or of the parameter. Okay, you know, don't forget that in that community or in this society, we actually want to know what is the percentage of the population we prioritize abortion, what is the percentage of the population we prioritize gay marriage, what is the percentage of the population that we actually prioritize a certain kind of variable. Okay, and at the end of the day, we came out with this percentage, and of course we actually going to generalize that on the entire population. So we these are going to be like estimate, and they're actually going to be representing parameter. Okay, and let me tell you what parameter is. Just information that we are actually seeking for. Okay, we want to know how many percent of the respondent, how many percent of the population actually support a particular variable. Okay, and you know what? So parameter is unknown population characteristic value. And you know what? You can only get parameter when you study the entire population. But we don't study entire population. We only take sample, and of course, from the sample, these are the estimates, and this estimate we uh, uh, we also call them statistic. Okay, because they were computed from the data. We call them statistic, and of course, they are estimating the unknown parameter that we are actually seeking for. Okay, now if I want to uh, actually just like what I said 351 web users survey about what they believe to be the most influential issue in political election. Okay, I'm talking about those five variables. Of course, there are about 51% of the respondents actually believe that war is the most critical issue in the political elections. Of course, so if I want to now, if you take a look at what I have right here, these are example of, you know, the categorical variable that I talk about. Now, the question now is, uh, how can we actually use, you know, a picture, or how can we have a diagrammatical summary of what I have right here? So if I want to have a diagrammatical summary, of course, we have different kind of chart that we can actually talk about. Now, number one of them is what we call a pie chart. Okay. Now, uh, uh what I'm trying to write here is just for, just to be able to show you how to do this in R. Okay, since we are adopting R software for this lecture. Okay, now I'm actually going to write issue. I'm going to put the variables. Can you see the variables now? And I'm actually going to go to the count. This corresponds to the frequency. I'm going to take you back this frequency here from 33 to 75. Okay, so I'm going to write that. Then I'm going to write pi. Then I'm going to put a count. That is this particular count right here. Then issue. The main, is a political partial. Just this is just more or less like a topic. Okay, so then this is the code for the pie chart, and this is the code for the bar chart. Okay, so we have different kind of diagrammatical uh, summary. Okay, of categorical variable. Okay, now I'm going to show you the picture right now. After running that in R. Now take a look at that. So what I have here right now is the bar chart of the political issue that I talk about, and as you can see right here, uh, the bar corresponds to the wall is the longest. Okay, so why are we drawing? Why are you trying to draw a chart? Because in research, okay, people, most of the people, or the I mean the audience, they uh you know actually understand reading from the graph, reading from the chart, than reading from the table. If you take a look at this, because you know um, we have different kind of audience, and in research, we need to make sure we use kind of a device in such a way that you know the stakeholder will be able to get information. They'll be able to understand what we are passing across. Okay, they'll be able to understand that easily. And I want to tell you that if you take a look at the table that I have here compared to this picture, of course, everyone will be able to appreciate the fact that, oh, this one has the longest one, and this is and can say this actually corresponds to the wall. So using bars, as comparison, okay, using bars as comparison, people can have easy at a glance. It's very easy to glance through that. Okay, now this is what we call a bar chart. Okay, so bar chart is systematical way, okay, to summarize our categorical data. I'm going to say that again. So bar chart is one of a diagrammatical way to summarize categorical variable. Okay, and this is the pie chart. Of course, as you can see, uh, the pie chart is going to show something like a 360-degree stuff. And as you can see, the wall has the largest part of the cycle. Okay, so this is another way to describe you know uh, to summarize categorical variable diagrammatically. Okay, so now, of course, in the interpretation, based on what we saw in the pie chart and the bar chart, you're going to see that what seems to be overriding issue, you know, that people base their vote on. So social issues are not as influential as national issue, because when you take a look at what I have right here, okay, war is a national issue, because in a war, the particular country we actually want to engage the other country. But every other one, when you talk about abortion, we talk about gay marriage, when you talk about religion, and when you talk about economy, they are more or less like a national issue. Though economy is very close to that, because the fact that I know some people in economics may try to argue it out that the economy of one country may affect the economy of another nation. Of course, there is no, you know, uh, argument about that. I'm not debating that, but the fact remains that people actually vote, base their votes, okay, in any political election based on this result that I'm projecting right now. So people actually base their votes on, national issue, that has to do with the war, and after war, followed by the economy, then religion, then in that order. Okay, so that is that. Now, I've displayed pie charts and bar charts. Now, the question now is, like I said, the bar chart and the pie chart, they are actually performing the same function, because we use two of them to describe diagrammatically, uh, to summarize categorical variable. Of course, you can use any of the two, but uh, you know the question now is, which one is the best, which one is out of the partial, the paragraph and stuff like that. So which one? So you can use any one. It depends on, that's a matter of choice. Okay, but if I want to actually choose, of course I'm actually going to choose bar graph. I'm going to choose bar graph. I'm actually going to choose this. Okay, and of course, if you take a look at most of the banks, most of the researchers, they prefer using Basha to describe the grammatically categorical variable because of the fact that you know it is you can actually uh, you know glance is very easy at a glance. The information that is passing across is very one can easily decode the pitch that. Okay. um the next thing that I actually want to talk about is we've talked about you know uh, the diagrammatical summarization of categorical variable. Okay, and I told you the other time, we have two sets of variables, the categorical and the quantitative. Okay, now how can we also describe, do we have a chart to describe quantitative variable the way we have described categorical? Okay, so our next you know uh, subtopic that we're actually going to focus on is going to be graphical summaries for quantitative variables. So I just walk you through the graphical summary of categorical variable. So now we want to go into quantitative. And I think I remember the other time when I talk about quantitative variable, then of course we are trying to talk about variable, you know, that has a numerical value. Okay, that's a numerical value. Okay, now but in the when we're trying to describe quantitative variable using a chart, the very first thing that we also want to talk about is what we call distribution. Okay, and of course when you talk about distribution, you know we actually want to look at the distribution of the data set, like just like what I told you before. We After collecting the data set, we need to understand our data set, because understanding of our data set will enable us to be able to know the appropriate statistical methodology that can actually be applied, and that is the reason why we need to care about that. Okay, so there's something that we call distribution of data. And you know what? The distribution of the data is just trying to show the values a variable takes and how often they occur. Okay? The values a variable take and how often they occur. Now, let me tell you something. We find ourselves in a world where there's a variation. So, which means if I have different kind of variables, then some variables we have, they will occur more than other variables. So what do I say they're going to have? What I'm trying to say in essence is that the frequency associated with a particular variable is actually going to be greater down. You're going to be above the other one. Just like what I just if you take a look at the example that I cited right here, you can see that these are variables, but they get different frequencies. So which means war frequently occur more than the others, more than the other variables. That's what we talk about. So that is what we mean by distribution. Okay. So that's what we mean by distribution. So we want to know how the data set are, distributed. Okay. We want to know how they are distributed. We want to be able to look at a pattern. Okay. Because the distribution of a data set, okay, will enable us to know the appropriate statistical methodology that can actually be applied to analyze the data. I'm actually going to say that again. Okay, when you know the distribution of your data set, okay, you will be that will enable you to know to figure out the right methodology, statistical methodology that you're actually going to use to analyze the data. Now let me tell you what we're doing right now. Some people will say, okay, are we not analyzing the data already? No, we are not analyzing the data already. What we are conducting right now is what we call preliminary investigation, where we're trying to understand our data. Okay, now if you really want to understand a quantitative data, then you need to start from the distribution. And that was the reason why I said, the distribution shows the values a variable takes and how often they occur. Okay. Now the question now is, how do we have a graphical summary? So why do we need to do the graphical summary of a quantitative data or of a quantitative variable? And that was why I said, The graphical summary helps us visualize the following features of distribution for quantitative variables. Number one, it's going to tell us about the overall shape. We need to know the shape of our distribution of the data. So why do we need to know the shape? Because I don't know whether some of you have heard about normal distribution before. We have normal distributions and we have some skew distributions. Okay, and let me tell you something. Uh, if you want to apply statistical methodology, we have some models in statistics, you know, that have normality absorption. Then it means if I actually want to use a model that with the underlying, that follows normal distribution, then it means I also need to be able to investigate the distribution of my data set to be able to see whether it follows normal distribution. Don't forget that I said last week, I said that if you want to analyze data, if you want to use a model on the data, you got to make sure that the state of the model and the state of the data actually match. Now, what do I mean by that? Then it means if I have a model, you know, that have normality absorption, because I told you the other time, models have absorptions. Okay, so if a particular model have normality absorption, okay, before we can use such model on data, we actually need to investigate whether the distribution of the data is normal, because we got to use a model with the normal absorption with normally distributed data. Okay, so if you do that, of course, the state of the model and the state of the data actually match. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So, and of course, when you are trying to know the distribution of a data set, you actually want to know the pattern. You want to know the shape. Okay, does it have a shape of a normal distribution or not? If it has a shape of a normal distribution, then it means we got to use model with normality absorption. If it doesn't have a shape of a normal distribution, if it is skewed, I'm actually going to tell you what we mean by skewness. If it is skewed, then it means we can't use normal distribution. I mean, we can't use a model that have a normality absorption. And the only condition to use a normal distribution with a normality absorption, then we need to transform such data that is skewed, so that after transforming the data that is skewed, then it can actually attain normality. Okay, and when it attain normality, of course, we can actually confront a normally distributed data with models with the assumptions of normality. Okay, then another thing that the graphical summary of quantitative variable or data we actually enable us to do is to know the center and the spread. And what do we mean by center? The center is actually going to be you know when you have a distribution. Okay, there's something that we call the center of the distribution. you know I don't know whether some of you have heard about center of gravity in physics. The center of gravity is a point through which the resultant weight of a body acts, because we believe that the center of a distribution, we actually any point that corresponds, that is in the center, will be the one that is actually going to represent the whole location. Okay, so with that, we'll be able to know the center, then we'll be able to know how spread is the data. Okay, and when I'm talking about spread, I'm actually talking about how the respective how the data point, the rest of the data point, how they deviate from the data point at the center. Okay, you want to measure how far apart, because we actually expect that the data point at the center, okay, should not be far away from the rest of the data point. Okay, so by the time we make use of the graphical when you do the graphical summary of quantitative data, of course you will be able to investigate, you'll be able to see for yourself whether the data point at the center is actually far away from the rest of the data points. Because let me give you this example. If you elect a representative into maybe into the US Congress or whatever Congress or Parliament in the world, okay. Now let me just say into legislative chamber, okay. You actually elect someone, okay. The society, maybe a particular community, elect someone. Of course, this particular representative should not be far away from his or her consistency, because the moment is far away from his or her consistency, then it's not likely to represent them very well. Okay, you need to be able to visit the consistency regularly to be able to know what people want. So the same way, when you have a data point at the center of a distribution, okay, you assuming that the data point is actually representing the rest of the data point, okay, and how are you actually going to know whether this particular data point at the center is actually represents the rest of the data point? Then you got to measure how far apart, which we call the spread, and of course with the with this particular diagrammatical way of visualizing the situation, the quantitative variable, of course, you'll be able to figure that out. Okay, so and the next thing that it will enable us to figure out is outlier. Now, let me tell you this. Outlier, according to Benkamp in 1982, is when a data point is not consistent with the rest. Okay, when you believe that a particular data point is actually okay it's actually not consistent with the rest. Maybe you believe that, oh, this particular data point should actually come from a different distribution, you know other than the distribution of the rest of the data. Okay, incidentally, this is what I work on my PhD student. I mean, the PhD program that I concluded in 2016, where I try to you know work on the detecting and correcting outlier in a data set. Now, if you take a look at what I have here, I got 10, 11, 9, 7, and I got 1001. That's an outlier. That's looking like an outlier. Okay, so when you try to understand the distribution of your data by trying to make use of the the graphical representation of the quantitative data, then you'll be able to identify, you'll be able to figure out all this. And you know what, as time goes on, I'm actually going to tell you, the um the disadvantage, the threats, you know, an outlier can actually pose. Okay, so I'm going to tell you as time goes on. Now, excuse me. The other time I told you that we got two ways. We got two the grammatical way to summarize categorical variables. Now, for quantitative variables, we got stem and leaf plots and histogram. Okay, we got stem and leaf plots and histogram. If I actually want to describe quantitative variable, I'm actually going to use, if I want to describe that, if I want to summarize that graphically, I'm actually going to use this tool. But if I want to summarize um, categorical variable, okay, graphically, I'm actually going to use the pie chart and the bar chart. Okay, so I just wanted to see, you know, the difference between the graphical summary of categorical variables and that of quantitative variables. That's actually what I wanted to say. So now these are the appropriate statistical tools, the graphical tools that we use for, you know, if you actually want to summarize quantitative variables. Okay, so we're going to work on them, and you're actually going to see. Now, what I put right here is just a way to construct a stem and leaf plots. It's more or less like you got a stem, and of course, you got leaves around the stem. Okay, and that is a way we actually going to construct that. Okay, so you're going to follow this. Number one, you're going to order the data from the smallest to the largest. Then you're going to select one or more leading digits to the stem. So this is the procedure, but I'm actually going to show you how you can do that in R. Okay, so I'm going to actually walk you through this, during the lab session. Okay, so excuse me. So for instance, if I have this data set, I got 10, 20, up to 56. And why am I doing stem and leaf? I'm doing stem and leaf. I'm applying stem and leaf because I actually want to. This is a quantitative variable, quantitative data. Okay. Now this is a quantitative data, and I actually want to summarize them. And if I want to summarize them, of course, I told you the other time we actually want to know the shape of the data. We want to know whether there's an outlier in the data set. We want to know how spread is the data set from the center, and we actually want to figure out the center as well. So that is the reason why we're trying to do stem and leaf. Okay, so when you excuse me, so when you have this data set, you copy that data set, and in R, you're going to write stem of the data. You can see that now, and this is what you're going to have. Now, if you take a look at this is more or less 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is more or less like the stem, and these are the leaves. Now, take a look at this. It means I got 10, which is this guy here. Okay, 2, 0, that is going to be 20. 2, 3, that will be 23. 2, 7, that will be 27. Of course, I got 327. You can see 27, 27, 27, and that's why you got 2, 7, 7, 7. Can you see that now? Now, if you take a look at this data set, there is nothing like 30 something. And that's why even when I put 3, I'm not going to put anything here. Okay, because there's nothing like there is no value that starts from 3. Okay, even though I'm putting 3 just to satisfy the fact that okay, this is 1, 2, then this has to be 3. I'm trying to go in a logical order. Even if there is nothing that starts from 3 or nothing that starts from a particular number, I'm still going to put a number, but I'm not going to put any leaf. So don't put 0 here. If you put 0, you're automatically saying 30, and there's no 30 here. Okay, you are not going to put any number. And this is going to be 40. Can you see that now? 49. See that now? 55 and 56. So this is stem and leaf. Okay. Now, if you take a look at this, if I want to draw the distribution now, I'm going to draw the line right here. Look at that. Oh my God. So I'm going to draw the line. Going to see, I'm going to draw the line that way. And drawing the line that way, that is looking, more skilled. Okay. That is looking more skilled. Okay. Now, the next thing that I actually want to talk about, I want to apply that to real life practical situation. Okay, and I want to use basketball series. Okay, the NBA, uh, the National Basketball Association. If you want to have access to the data set that I want to use, it's actually right here. Okay, of course we're talking about the data set is on salaries. Of course, the salaries is quantitative. Okay, if I actually want to do describe this data, if I want to summarize a quantitative data, of course, I'm actually going to use either stem and leaf or histogram because we use two of them for quantitative variable. And right here, I'm talking about salaries. Okay, I'm talking about salaries. Okay, so here is basketballreference.com reported on NBA team salaries for 2016-17 season. Okay, and of course, these are the teams. There are many. I just wrote two. Okay, Atlanta or Boston. Now, if you take a look at for Atlanta, this is a salary. Okay, for Boston, the salary we have several of them, and of course, what I actually have here, the conference. We got some basket. We got some teams, some team in the Eastern Conference, Western Conference, and stuff like that. Okay, so this is just to tell you, the kind of conference they belong. Like I said, uh, the team that we consider here are for Eastern uh, and the Western Conference. Okay, Eastern stuff. The E represent the Eastern and W represent Western. Okay. Now, if I try to write the code in R, okay, this is the code. Now, what am I looking for? I actually want to know the distribution of the salaries of the basketball teams. Okay, I want to know the distributions of the salary of the basketball team. Okay, that's what that. So this is the code, and of course, this is the boss. This is stem and leaf. Okay, so this is the stem and leaf. Of course, from there you can actually draw a line to be able to see whether the distribution is normal or is is skewed. Okay, because if you want to analyze this any kind of data, I mean a quantitative data, you actually need to know what is the distribution of the data. Okay, you need to know that. Now, how do we interpret the shape, the outlier, the center, the spread that I talk about? Do you know that from what I just analyzed right now, from this right now, you can actually get a center? Okay, you're actually going to get all this. Okay, now looking at the shape, the lower tail extends further than the upper. Look at that. If you draw this, if you draw the curve, okay, you see that now? You're going to see that the lower tail actually extended. Consider now. So this is a tail right here. This is another tail right here. You see that now? So that's exactly what I'm trying to say. So then outlier, of course, if you take a look at that, you know, there is nothing like an outlier here because, you know, 7 is not that highly, distance from 11. Okay. And that was why we said no team appear to have a salary more smaller or larger than other team because an outlier is an unusual observation. Okay. And, a situation whereby maybe you notice that a team, pay players more than usual, okay, whether pay more or pay less, okay. So we can actually sense that to be an outlier, and when outlier is present in a data set, okay, it could cause a potential damage, and that is the essence of this investigation. Okay, of course the center is 100 to 110 million. If you take a look at that, you're actually going to see that this is where uh, the center is actually going to be. Okay, this is where the center is actually going to be. Of course, if you want to know the center, you know what to do. Write the number in the middle, okay? The number in the middle. If you actually count from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And you also start counting from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you're going to see that these two numbers probably they more or less fall in the middle. Okay. Now, they're concerning the spread. If you want to talk about the spread, what the spread, you're going to talk about range. And what is range? Range is a difference between the highest score and the lowest score. Now, if you come back here, the smallest number here is going to be 72. Okay. And of course, the highest number is going to be 118. Okay, and that was why we said the salary range from 72 to 118 million. Okay, the lowest salary by the basketball team was 72 million, and the highest was 118 million. And how do I get a spread? Of course, I actually get a spread by picking the lowest number and by picking the lowest number and the highest number. Of course, the lowest number is actually going to be 72, and the highest number is going to be 118. Okay, that is going to be the spread. So you can actually see now that using this graphical device, of course, we're able to figure out the spread. Okay. Uh, the next thing is actually going to be, we're going to talk about histogram. And histogram is another way to describe, quantitative variable. Okay. The histogram will also enable us to get, the features that we just talked about. It's going to enable us to get the center. We're going to know the distribution of the center, the distribution of the data set, among other stuff. Okay. So, um, if you take a look at that, of course, this is a typical example of how the histogram is actually going to look like. Histogram is different from a bar chart. You're going to notice that some bars here are joined together, they are connected. But when you take a look at the bar chart that we did under a categorical variable, or you're actually going to see that we uh, we the bars are are separated, okay, but in the case of histogram, they are joined together. Okay, so the example that I'm actually showing is just like, okay, 0 to 9. Of course, if I want to use histogram, okay, maybe I have an income distribution, like for instance, this is like 0 to 19, 20 to 39, stuff like that. And we now have we got a count, we got a frequency, okay. So what we're trying to say in essence is that if you take a look at it, it's like one, you know the number that fall within the 0 to 19 is one, and the one that fall between 20 and 39 is maybe probably around 5 and so on like that. So we use this. So this is histogram, okay. So this is histogram. So this is the way the histogram look like. Okay, so if I want to run that in R, okay, if I want to run that in R, of course, using this data set, in R, I'm actually going to write east into data. And when I do that, this is what I'm going to have. Can you see that now? That's what I'm going to have. Okay, so you can see that now. So this is the histogram. Okay, this is what we mean by histogram. Okay, in a way, we are describing quantitative data. Okay, so let's talk about the uses of histogram. Of course, I've walked you through the uses of a stem and leaf. Okay, so histogram, like I said, is used to display large amount of data values in a relatively simple chart form. Of course, you can take a look at that. You actually see that that is exactly what is depicting. Then you can also tell about the relative frequency of occurrence. Relative frequency of occurrence, just like, okay, uh, those one within 0 to 19 is one, between 20, just trying to tell us the relative of occurrence. So that is what they talk about. Then it's also enable us to see whether there's to enable us to see the distribution in the data. The pattern, okay, in the data. It's going to tell us whether it is normally distributed or not, okay. And you also talk about variation, okay, how spread, it is similar to stem and leaf. But there's a there's one unique benefit of using histogram, because with histogram it will enable you to make future prediction, okay, based on the data. Based on the data you have, you can actually make future prediction. Okay, I'm actually going to walk you through that, as time goes on. Okay, so where did the histogram come from? Some of you have heard about histogram. Where does it come from? Of course, there was somebody called like Kaoru Ishikawa. Okay, he's one of the Japan most renowned experts on quality improvement. Okay, so I think he was one that invented uh you know the histogram. Okay, and of course he actually do that in trying to improve the quality in Japan. Okay, that's exactly what. So how do histogram work? Okay, so with the histogram, of course, you'll be able to calculate the mean, which I call they're going to be the center, the minimum, the maximum, the standard deviation. You're actually going to know the class width, the number of classes, the skewness, and the kurtosis. Okay, so I'm actually going to tell you the meaning of all these and their relevance, in statistical analysis. Okay, so but let me tell you something. If you uh, if you calculate there are some like I said, the statistic you can compute from histogram a day, because of course we actually, when we have data set, we want to figure out what is going to be the center, what is going to be the minimum of the data set, what is going to be the highest, what is going to be the skewness. Okay, the skewness is actually going to tell us, okay, whether there's a departure from normality. Okay, we actually want to see whether maybe the distribution of the data set is skewed to the right or skewed to the left. Because if it is skewed to the right or skewed to the left, then it means there's a deviation from normality. Okay, then we're also going to talk about, we can also compute kurtosis from histogram. Because of these features, I'm actually going to rate histogram higher than stem and leaf, just like the same way I actually rated, you know, uh, bar charts above, um, you know, pie charts. Okay, when you are trying to describe categorical data. Okay, so when you are trying to summarize, quantitative data using graphical means, of course, I think there's a lot of benefits attached to histogram. Okay, because it's from, if you're able to get your histogram in place, of course you'll be able to compute a lot of statistics that are very, very essential. Okay, now I told you something the other time, that if we actually want to model, if we want to confront the data set we have collected with a particular model, I told you some models in statistics have normality assumptions. Okay, now if models have normality assumption, of course, you can only use that model on data set that are normally distributed. Now the question now is, how can I actually recognize the shape of a normal distribution? Of course, if you take a look at what I have here, this is a shape of a normal distribution. So in a situation where you plot your histogram and you actually got a shape that is different from what I'm showing you right now, of course, you're actually going to know that, okay, that is that kind of data set, the distribution of that data set is actually going to be skewed. Okay, now let me tell you something. Skewness and kurtosis are an outlier. They are problem in statistics, and that is the reason why we actually need to check. Okay, we actually need to check our data very well. We actually need to check whether the distribution is normal. We actually need to check whether there is no outlier. It's just like, before a doctor we start we commence a treatment on a patient. This A doctor actually need to carry out some examination, and that's exactly what we're also doing in research. In research, when data is involved, okay, you actually need to understand your data. You need to exploit. When you try to understand your data, you're trying to exploit your data. You are trying to you know understand that, because that will enable you to figure out the right statistical methodology that can actually be used. Otherwise, if we don't do that, then we are not likely to get information that we need. And don't forget, I said from day one, I told you before, that we actually need information to be able to understand the world we live in. Okay? Now, so that is a shape of a normal distribution. Okay? There's a shape of a normal distribution. Okay, so the next thing I'm actually going to talk about is the 5 shapes that the histogram could. Give me 1 second. I think I'm going to have a new share right now. Okay. Let me see whether that is loading. Okay. Sorry about that. Now, the 5 shapes that the histogram could take include. Now, let me tell you this. When I have a set of data set and I plot the histogram, why am I plotting the histogram? I actually want to know understand the distribution of the data set, and then when I know the distribution of the data set, another thing I also want to know, I'll be able to compute some basic statistics. Okay. Now, when you plot in an attempt to investigate the distribution of a data set, there are 5 possible things that you are likely to say. Number one is either uh, the shape you have may be normal. That was a normal distribution. And of course, if it is normal, of course, it's actually going to look like this. You see that now? Okay. And the shape may be positively skewed. It may be negatively skewed. It may be bimodal, and it could be multimodal. I'm actually going to explain this to you one by one. Okay, and I'm going to show you the shape of of a normal. Of course, I've shown you the shape of a normal distribution. I'm actually going to show you a shape, when the distribution of the data is positively scaled, or negative, when it negative scaled, when it has a bimodal is like it's actually going to have two mode, or multimodal is going to have more than two mode. And let me tell you, if a distribution have two modes or more than two mode, that's a problem. Okay, if a distribution is skewed to the right or skewed to the left, that's a problem too, because you can no longer use a model with normality assumption unless something is done. Okay, now I'm actually going to show you that now. Now this is how a positively skewed data look like. Okay, a positively skewed data, you can see that it's just more or less that the distribution of the data is to the right. Okay, and in negatively skewed data, of course, the distribution of the data is to the left. Now these two, they are problem in statistics. Okay, so it means if you act in an attempt to exploit your data set, and you decide to plot the histogram, okay, of your data set, okay, and you actually have this or this, then it means you cannot use a model with normality assumption. Okay, because I told you the state of the state of the model and the state of the data have to match. Okay, the state of the, if a model have a normality assumption, then the distribution of the data set should be normal. Okay, now if you take a look at this, now this is a positively skewed data, this is a negatively skewed data. Okay, so I'm also going to show you an example of a bimodal. This is an example of a bimodal. Bimodal is just like it has two mode. What do I mean by mode? Of course, mode is called the highest frequency. Okay, mode is, you are referring to a particular number that occur more often, that occur more, the number of times than the other. But in this situation, we have two of that. We got two mode. And when you have two mode, of course, that is a problem in statistics. Okay. And this is a situation where you got multimodal. Of course, that's a problem too. So, which means bimodal, multimodal, right skewness, left skewness are problem in statistics. And that is the reason why we need to investigate, we need to exploit our data, okay, to be able to understand our data. That's why we're doing that. Okay, now how do histogram work? I think I told you the other time about how it work. Of course, the analysis will help you to make better decision toward a quality improvement. Okay, I told you that uh, if you really want to have quality research, of course, you need to be able to exploit your data, okay, using this graphical tool. So, and when you are trying to do that, then you are trying to improve on precision. Then you are trying, when you try to do this, of course, you're actually going to bring the unexplained variation under control when you do that. And when you bring the unexplained variation under control, then it means you are likely to get information, the hidden information in the data set that you're looking for. Okay. Now, histogram versus stem and leaf plots. Of course, like I said, I, you know, if I actually want to choose between the two graphical, uh, quantitative analysis of data, I'm actually going to choose histogram because of the fact that histogram has a lot of benefit, and that was why I said, they are more versatile, because when you apart from getting the shape of the shape of the data, apart from getting the distribution of the data set, of course, when you have your histogram in place, you will be able to compute some, basic statistical essentials like minimum, like maximum, like Sarah, the range, and so on like that. Okay, so that is the reason why I'm actually going to. Yeah, what is next? Of course, what is next is actually going to be numerical summary of quantitative data. When I say numerical summary, what we just did today, let me just remind you of what we did today. uh we've covered you know graphical summary of categorical variable. Okay, we and I introduced you to bar chart and a bar chart. Okay, and after that, I'll actually move you to the graphical summary of a quantitative variable. Okay, in that situation, I actually introduce you to what we call the stem and leaf plot and the histogram. Okay, and what we're going to do next, okay, is actually going to be numerical summary. We're actually going to go, we're going to go away from graphical, the graphical analysis. We're actually going to go into numerical analysis in our next lecture. This is how far I'm actually going to go today. I want to remind you that there's going to be assignment this week, and the first assignment of the semester will actually be uploaded on Monday night. And let me also tell you that I'm actually going to conduct an office hour through the Zoom on Tuesday. I will advise that you use the link that you found on the course canvas to gain entrance. Uh, where you can actually ask whatever question that is bothering your mind, for those of you who actually need clarification. Okay, so until next time that I'm actually going to come your way with another exciting topic, uh, see you, and make sure you stay safe and do have a good day.